First, the main character suffered a sudden heart attack and then a coma after she recovered from major surgery. But the news about the death of her younger sister in an accident was simply great news, so different that the young lady couldn't believe it. The pain of this child's betrayal and lies was devastating. The girl was happy until she found out the truth 2 years later. Now her charges are turning to the young lady. They are screaming that the director cannot leave, but the girl only says that her charges should not follow her because she will return in an hour, and if they do not obey her orders, they will be fired immediately. The young lady just wanted to save the child, which reminded her of her sister. The main character did not plan to die, but a truck drove out of the darkness towards her. At that moment, her impulsive behavior ruined her sister's heart, but perhaps the child she saved that night was the price for the young lady's karma, because her younger sister was the heart donor for the main character, and she did not die. After the young lady is hit by a car, she thinks how soft it is and wonders if she is now in bed. Well, she thinks, isn't she dead now? Or could she have been taken to the hospital? The girl understands that she seems to have survived again, but does not understand whether she should feel relief. After all, if there was someone else in her place, he would rejoice at the second chance, but she doesn't think so. The girl is upset and annoyed, because she won't be able to see her little sister again. And to be honest, if she dies, there are no guarantees that she will meet the girl again. The main character thought about it, and now she asks God, if he exists, to help her. The girl would beg and ask for forgiveness in order to see her sister again. But suddenly the young lady realizes that her body is not moving, and she wonders if maybe everything is more serious than she thought. But when she opens her eyes, she immediately closes them tightly back. The girl wonders if this is a dream. After all, the first thing she saw after waking up was a crowd of people. Their hair and clothing, as well as their eyes and facial expressions, are features that have nothing to do with Korea. The main character asks what is happening, but I understand that the language she speaks is not Korean, and she has never heard such a language before. Then the main character hears someone's voice. He claims that this world is different from the one in which the girl lived. The young lady doesn't understand what he's talking about, but the voice continues and claims that this is the place she was trying to get to, a place where she can be with her little sister. The main character thinks what this means, because someone is talking to her. The voice says that she sincerely wanted to get there. The young lady just thinks how unusual this is because even her hair color has changed. People around worship the girl. They thank the Almighty. The blonde does not understand what they are talking about and why they are bowing. But then suddenly she remembers that she met God and made a deal with him. The girl hesitantly tries to get off her seat, but she cannot stay on her feet and immediately collapses to the ground. But suddenly, she is grabbed by His Highness the Emperor. The young lady is surprised when she sees a young man with bright red eyes in front of her. This impresses her, because the guy looks cruel. The girl feels the Emperor's gaze piercing her, so she pushes the boy away. The main character thinks that the color of his eyes and his touch feel quite real, and this is not a dream. But when she looks at the place where she woke up, she sees that it looks like a coffin. The young lady thinks that this cannot happen and wonders how she could wake up in a coffin because she was not reborn and woke up in someone else's body. But suddenly the guy runs his finger over her lips. The crowd immediately screams how His Highness can do this. And the guy just looks at the young lady seriously. The main character thinks that her neck hurts a little. At this time, one of the knights approaches His Highness. She asks His Majesty to immediately release the saint, because even if he is an emperor, the girl cannot allow him to treat her holiness like that. But the guy only claims that finally the young lady really woke up. The main character does not understand why he behaves this way, but looking at her hand, she sees a ring that glows. After which someone's voice is heard, he says that, in the end, his first servant has awakened and is telling people to treat her as they treat him. After all, for all of them, a girl may be of low birth, but for him, their God, she is a child. The girl is surprised. She thinks why she felt as if she had been deceived by a man who called himself God. After all, she is there only to find her younger sister, but the young lady could not even imagine that this world would be like this. After all, this is a place about which she knows nothing, strange and unknown, and also with a different order of things. When the main character woke up, she didn't understand where she was. But then a voice turned to her and said that Lee Ji-hoo, born on January 1st, is the current director of the SH company. And the young lady died instead of a child who was almost hit by a car. The main character looks towards the voice and thinks what or who it is. The girl couldn't see anything because of the bright light, but then she remembered that she had been hit by a car. The voice says to the young lady that if everything is true, then let her confirm it. The young lady replies that everything is correct and then wonders if it is Yama. Yama is the god of death and the supreme judge of the underworld. The voice offers to talk first about the trial, and then they claim that the young lady can be reborn. After all, she truly is a special soul. The main character thinks whether they are trying to drag her into some kind of sect or drug industry because calling her special is a great way to win someone over. The voice claims that it doesn't know what the young lady is thinking about right now, but she is definitely wrong. So he tells her not to be so distrustful. After all, the child she saved is also special. He saved many people and was destined to die. However, the young lady died in his place, and the boy will continue to benefit this world. In addition, the girl gave her life without thinking that she would lose something, and this is a noble deed. Now she can become a dragon with absolute strength and immortality. But the guy thinks that although they are a problematic species, their wishes must be fulfilled if they receive divine blessings. Therefore, the voice asks who the girl would like to become. The main character immediately answers decisively that she wants to live with her younger sister, and the voice says that this was a very quick answer. The young lady replies that it is so because her sister's heart was transplanted into her, and the girl received another chance at life. This is the reason why she wants to devote her life to her sister, and she is even ready to become a slave. The voice claims that a slave is a little too much and asks why the young lady already has such low self-esteem. Then the guy offers a few more options, but the young lady is not interested in them. The young man is already wondering if this is the infamous older sister complex that he has heard so much about. But then he sighs and says with a smile that he understands and the guy will fulfill her wish, because the girl is a special soul. The main character sincerely thanks him, and the guy claims that, according to her wish, the young lady will be reborn in a world where her sister lives and the girl will be able to be with her. But in return, she will have responsibilities that the young lady will have to fulfill, and her sister has also been reincarnated. The main character thinks that she will finally see Huan He and is very happy about this. But then the girl asks how she can recognize her sister if she loses her memories, and especially how she can live for her. Then, the voice asks if she wants to keep her memories, and the young lady nods. Then the guy agrees and says that she can tell others about the rebirth, but she can't talk about her past life because it could upset the balance in this world. He also has one more condition. The main character claims that she will do everything, but the guy just smiles and says that this is enough and he will talk about the last condition later. The young lady asks if he will say this when she dies again, but the guy says no, and they will see each other quite often while the girl performs her duties. And now the trial is over and the young lady can go. Then the main character asks Mr. Yama to tell him more about the world where she is going. Well, he just says that he is not Yama. Then the girl asks who he is. Well, at that very moment, a huge door just appears in front of her. Before entering this huge door, the young lady noticed a strange expression on the face of that same guy. But now she understands that she was indeed sent to this strange place. But she has no idea where her sister lives now, and the man who is called the Emperor is doing something similar to her. The girl understands that this bastard literally sent her, and this explains his grin. In her thoughts, she asks where her sister is. But the Emperor just kisses her. Everyone screams that at least this guy is not the Emperor, but this is disrespectful. The blonde just thinks that she didn't expect that she would ever be harassed in the middle of the square. One of the knights grabs his sword and screams that even the Emperor's hard work does not give the guy the right to cross the line, and he must move away now. The knights stand next to the young lady and ask if her holiness is okay, but this only makes the brunette angry. He uses his power and asks if the knight dares to block his path to the young lady. The guy orders him to step aside while he asks in an amicable way, unless, of course, the knight wants to die. The young lady does not understand at all what is happening, but there is something that she knows for sure, and this is that this man really intends to finish off those who stand in his way. All the residents are in complete shock. They don't understand how the Emperor can behave like this, and the young man only says that those who want to die will not stop talking. The main character thinks that her head is about to explode. She hopes that someone will explain to her what is happening, but then Li Shinju decides to pull herself together. The girl understands that a bloodthirsty guy is standing in front of her, and these people in armor standing between them are knights. And the young lady now feels like a war might start because of this tension. But suddenly, she comes to the realization that these people are trying to protect her, and she is most likely an important person for them, and to such an extent that they are ready to risk their lives for her. She remembers how the young man said that, according to her wish, the girl will be reborn in the world where her sister lives, but in return she will have responsibilities that need to be fulfilled. The main character understands that these responsibilities may be related to her position. She does not know how high her position is, but if the girl is really so important to them, then she could meet her sister. There are, of course, many things that she cannot handle alone, but first of all, the young lady must resolve this situation. She asks the guy who he is, because usually people introduce themselves when they meet someone. But it seems to me in his case, that's why she's forced to ask. But suddenly the girl realizes that a pair of knights are flying near her. And when the young lady turns around, she sees that they have already died. The guy just asks furiously, "Did the young lady ask who he was?" The main character is completely shocked by this. The girl wonders if he is someone she should know, because if so, shouldn't she have been warned in advance? But this god is a real joker. Lee Shin-ju does not understand what she should do, but suddenly someone turns to the girl. This is one of the knights. But now he is very wounded. The guy claims that he will definitely protect her holiness, but the emperor only kicks him. He approaches the main character and asks if she really doesn't know who he is, and then looks at her with painful emotions. The main character claims that she doesn't know because she can't know a villain like him. The young man asks if she is saying that he is a villain, and the girl replies that everything is exactly like that and asks why she should know him. The main character understands that since they buried the possibility of a peaceful settlement, she has no idea what needs to be done to make the instigator of this mess leave. So she needs to find another way to get rid of him. The young lady thinks that she needs to worry and decides to bluff a little. She then points her finger at the barrier and tells the guy to remove it now. And she thinks, what if this dome blocking others' entrance was created by this man? Then he would be able to remove it. Even the thought of it pisses her off, but the fact that he kissed her could mean that he favors her to some extent. But the girl doesn't understand why he's quiet, and how can one understand whether he's going to remove the dome or not? But the girl understands that she cannot be distracted because she cannot stop halfway, and judging by the lack of reaction, asking once was not enough. Then she decides to do it again. But suddenly, someone breaks into the conversation and says that the young man is the strongest man and the ruler of the Elisbane Empire, as well as a precious emperor with a body stronger than any warrior. And he must have heard God's instructions like everyone else there. After all, it was about how everyone should treat the girl the same way they treat God. It turns out to be a man with blonde hair. The main character thinks, isn't that what she heard when she woke up? But then she remembered that His Holiness is called the Pope, and this is the one who walks around and shakes everyone's hands and prays for everyone. But the girl understands that the title of priest cannot just fall from the sky. The young lady thinks that she is right, but in fact she is really a priest who is trying to deny it. But then the emperor pronounces the name Alsasi Ludan. He says that despite the fact that the guy is the younger brother of the pontiff, if he says one more word, he will die. The main character thinks, doesn't this mean that this is her younger sister? Ludan says that even the devil will not understand the emperor's words. The brunette angrily says that it seems the young man can't wait to die at his hands, and if so, he will do so. Ludan only laughs in response to this. But suddenly someone runs past the emperor. It turns out to be the main character. She immediately runs up to Ludan and realizes that the man said that this girl is her sister. The main character thinks that this is Hwan Hee, a child who looks to be a little over 10 years old. Shining eyes, the color of gold, silver hair as if out of this world. She's completely different from the Hwan Hee the young lady remembers. But it doesn't matter because the girl just knows it's her. Lee Shin-ju thinks she came there to meet Hwan Hee and also to protect her. The young lady hugs her sister and thinks that she will definitely do it this time. Ludan is a little puzzled by this, but the main character only hugs her sister tighter and realizes that this is her sister, to whom she is immensely grateful, and this is Hwan Hee, who gave her life for her. The girl understands that she will definitely protect her little sister in this life, and the emperor watches all this and then grins. He says that it turns out that the young lady does not remember him, but she recognized her brother, and this is a rather stupid situation. The main character understands that this man is dangerous, and he is definitely going to harm his sister. The young lady realizes that she can't let him get closer to them, and when the guy takes another step, Lee Shinju hugs his sister tightly and begins to use her powers. As a result of this, the knight's wounds are healed. All the people cry out that this is the power of her holiness and reach out to her. They beg the girl to stop, because now the use of divine power is dangerous for her body. The girl doesn't even listen to them and thinks that her sister won't get hurt and she will make her happy. But then her strength begins to leave her. The young lady's eyes close, but the girl knows she needs to make sure Huan He is safe. However, at that very second, the eyes close on their own. But suddenly someone picks up the girl. It turns out to be the emperor. When the main character looks at him, he thinks what happened to this man, and when he managed to get closer then, it seemed as if he was about to carry out a massacre, but it seems he is no longer angry. The two girls are worried about her holiness, but the emperor tells them to go away. Ludan turns to His Majesty and asks if he intends to take the girl to the Elispain Empire. After all, if so, he will not allow it to be done, because even if the guy could do it, her holiness just woke up and her body is fragile. But if the emperor takes her to the capital, he may lose her forever. The young man claims that her holiness was forced to use divine power immediately after awakening to save the people of His Majesty, and if something happened to the body of her holiness, Poplar does not even imagine what the consequences could be. Ludan tells the guy to retreat if he doesn't want to bring trouble to the continent. Then the emperor says that he is giving the young man a week, and during this time, the girl should recover. The main character's brother says that if it is possible, he will do everything in his power, and then turns to the brunette with a grin, calling him the human emperor. After this, the emperor says that her holiness must become a better person, and then turns around and leaves. Ludan screams, "Where is he going?" When the emperor comes to that place, he lays the young lady on the bed. The girl's eyes gradually begin to close. But the main character does not understand why this man is so gentle with her, and when the young lady opens her eyes, the first thing she sees is her sister. Ludan asks if the girl has come to her senses, but the main character just starts crying. The young lady's sister asks her holiness not to cry, because the girl is too weak now and may faint again. Ludan takes his sister's hand tightly and asks if she agrees. The main character understands that this child is her younger sister, but even with such a small body, she is the first cardinal and third divine ball of the empire. Besides the unusual name, which is unusual for South Korea, this child's appearance is very deceptive. She looks like a 10-year-old, but she's actually 17 and has weak lungs. The main character tried to heal them with the help of divine power, but the lungs did not perceive it at all. There are very rare diseases that cannot be cured even with the help of divine power, and Ludan's case is one of them. Ludan asks her holiness if his lungs are light gray in color. If so, then the girl should not worry, because if there is something wrong with the lungs, then they turn black. The main character realizes that her sister lied because she survived because this child sacrificed himself, and this breaks Lee Shinju's heart. But at the same time, the girl understands that she really managed to meet her younger sister in another world. The young man asks if her holiness is done crying, but the main game does not apologize and says that she accidentally cried. Then Ludan asks her not to apologize because her holiness is the most important person in the world and she should not apologize to anyone. After all, the young lady is the mother of the holy nation of Charlotte, spanning the entire continent. The girl understands that Hildegard Charlotte is the name of the body in which she is now located. The young lady woke up on her 20th birthday, but she has a different last name even though she and Ludan are blood relatives. The guy claims that nevertheless, usually a person who is a pontiff has a sign on his body, but her holiness had such a sign at birth. And the symbol of her holiness is a golden light, proving her divinity. The golden iris and golden hair that define a person as a pontiff were the reason why the young lady was immediately recognized as a pontiff. After all, she was born this way, but the girl did not wake up. Then the main character realizes that this body initially did not have an owner. After this, the guy claims that this was news from 6 days ago. Hildegard is surprised that this is us and asks if she was unconscious for 6 days. Ludan claims that everything is so, and as soon as she woke up after a 20-year sleep, then this crazy person, or better yet the emperor, did this to the young lady. The main character asks if you were going to Ludan says something rude, but the young man claims that of course not, and the young lady must have heard it. The main character says that, as an exception, she will close her eyes to this, but only once. Then the young man says that the girl should somehow rest more now. Hey, the girl should focus on getting better, because even the oracle was summoned to wait for her to awaken. The main character asks who it is. Ludan claims to have asked God for an oracle 7 years ago and received one for her holiness. After this, the young lady asks if that's all, and her sister claims that it is. The girl thinks that if this god were an employee of her company and talked to clients like that, she would force him to write a letter of apology. The guy claims that, to be honest, he thought that his heart would break, because it is not God's nature to respond to such requests. The main character thinks that he would have fired such a god long ago. Ludan says that the young lady has no idea how long he has been waiting for this, and finally her holiness has woken up. He says with tears in his eyes that the girl can't even imagine what a relief this is. The main character thinks how dare God upset her sister. A little while later, Ludan decides to get up from his seat. He kneels down and says that he wants to thank her holiness again. The main character, shocked by this, says that he should not do this because there is no reason for that. Moreover, for her beloved sister, she does not want a master-servant relationship. The girl then asks Ludan not to do this, but the guy says that he doesn't dare do otherwise, because to tell the truth, he shouldn't even touch the young lady's hand. The main character claims that he is wrong. After all, she would like her little sister to call her whatever is more comfortable for her. Ludan claims that he cannot afford this out of great respect for her holiness, but the girl then says that she gives him her permission, but if her sister is really having a hard time, then she asks to talk to her informally when they are alone. Ludan once again addresses the girl as her holiness, but the main character tells her sister to call her Unnie. After all, this is what the younger sister calls the older sister in Korea. But Ludan is a little surprised by this. He asks what her holiness is talking about. Then the main character asks what is wrong. Ludan claims that he is a boy. Hildegard is a little shocked by this. She asks if he is a boy with such a voice and face. But her brother replies that he really is a boy. The main character then squeezes his hand. She says in her thoughts that God is hired again, because the young lady canceled his dismissal because he gave her such a handsome brother as a bonus, and God really knows how to choose people. But then the brother turns to the young lady. He asks if she happens to remember what the guy said while she was sleeping. Strange to understand a language that she hasn't spoken before. And it is possible that there was a misunderstanding, but it would be better if this were so. The boy is excited, says that he will tell everything again, and asks the young lady not to be upset because everything is fine. The main character sits on her bed and sighs, and Ludan tells her holiness that this is a miracle. The girl says that this is true, and waking up after 20 years is truly incredible. The guy claims that's not what he's talking about, although that's also true. Hildegard just waves her head and says that she finds it surprising too. But the guy sits down and says that the most important thing to know is that the pontiff is absolute. And throughout all these years, the young lady has maintained the balance of this world, and at least everyone in this world knows the truth, regardless of whether they want peace or not. Hildegard wonders whether the emperor is one of those who do not want peace. She couldn't know anything because she had been sleeping for the last 20 years. But they called that man emperor, so this villain must really be a ruler. Ludan clenches his fists and says that he will allow himself to treat the saint very disrespectfully. And surely in the future, there will be more people who will act even more recklessly. The girl understands that he is right and this can happen, but this is incredibly humiliating. Ludan says that people can do this just like the emperor, but he is not a polished savage who naively believes that strength is everything. The main character, despite her brother, only thinks that his excited face looks very cute. The young man claims that there are certainly not many people who do not respect the pontiff, but if something happens, he will definitely protect her holiness, no matter the cost. The main character only asks Ludan what will happen if he gets hurt, but just the thought of it brings her so much pain. Ludan tells his sister not to forget that he is still the first cardinal of the nation of St. Charlotte and the third sword of the empire. In his eyes, the girl is still a child who doesn't even have an ID, and he is worried about her, so the guy asks the young lady not to do anything that could work against her. The main character thinks that everything just looked different until now, and how a child who looks like he's not even 10 yet and in addition suffers from painful lungs can be strong. Ludan says that God acted very wisely in distributing the strength of the young lady, and although she slept for 20 years, and also she does not have any memories, she calmly speaks the official language of the continent. The main character thinks that if she thinks about it, the guy probably wants to use her as quickly as possible. Hildegard claims to know nothing, except for the language, although she still has memories from her past life. Ludan is a little shocked by this, and the girl claims that she was reborn and used to live in another world, and after death she ended up there. The girl thinks that God said that she can be told about rebirth, so everything is in order. The young lady claims that it is not actually like reincarnation, and is more like a transfer of the soul. Hildegard says that she didn't tell all this, not because she doesn't trust the guy, but because it's very exciting. The young man asks if he can ask what kind of place this is, but the main character claims that she cannot tell the details, and in her thoughts adds that this will plunge the world into chaos. Then the guy says that there are cardinals outside the door, and there are about 7 of them. The girl thinks that the door is too far away, and wonders if the young man has senses of perception. The young lady suggests that if there are 7 cardinals outside the door, then it turns out that everyone is gathered. Well, the young man claims that there are only 10 cardinals, but behind the door there are 7 of them, and he is the 8th. The remaining 2 are currently away. The main character thinks that this is very strange, because the pontiff is, in theory, the most important and valuable person. And then she woke up 20 years later, and they suddenly had things to do. The guy says that if the sister is tired, she may not receive the cardinals. The young lady claims that everything is fine, and it would be very rude of her to just send everyone back, so let the young man invite them there. Ludanza says that the girl's health comes first. The main character just smiles at this. She thinks that her beloved sister, who sacrificed herself for her, is a very kind child, and her life doesn't matter if her sister lives. Hildegard thinks she will do anything for Ludan, and she has always been exhausted, so it doesn't matter. She is Li Xinju, who 6 days ago was the director of a large company. The main character says that she slept for 20 years and 6 days, so everything will be fine, and let Ludan open the door. After this, men enter the room. Hildegard realizes that this is her first meeting with the cardinals. They all look like the people she saw as soon as she opened her eyes. They weren't surprised or excited, but the young lady has an uneasy feeling, and she realizes that the cardinals look completely different from how she imagined them. And the young lady doesn't think the cardinals are happy about her awakening. One of them addresses Her Holiness. The girl says that her body is not in the best condition now, so she asks for patience. And then the girl says that it seems the cardinals are convinced that she has woken up, so she offers to talk about the real reason why they are here. The young lady asks what she can do for them as a saint. One of the cardinals replies that as pontiff, Her Holiness has responsibilities. She must restore the magical barrier that protects her entire nation, help the sick and disadvantaged, increase the divine power of the priests and swords of nations, because this way they can continue to protect their subjects. She must rule honestly, keep the strong in check, and protect the weak. Also, a young lady should help the poor and be the personification of peace. Then the young lady looks at her brother, and he says that the pontiff should be happy. Hildegard is very moved by this, and the young man adds that if Her Holiness is happy, then all the people on the continent will be happy. Hildegard thinks her little brother talks like an angel, and it's very cute. The main character thinks that if it helps her beloved brother, Ludan, then she will do everything. Hildegard gets out of bed and says that she doesn't know much about this world. However, as the deputy of God, she will make every effort to perform her duties well, and in her thoughts she adds that this is because her brother is everything to her. The next day, the main character wakes up in her bed. She wonders if it's already morning. Hildegard was so exhausted after the conversation with the cardinals that she fell asleep immediately after they left. But the young lady thinks she slept for just as long. The young lady wonders if this could be because she saw God in a dream. He told Hildegard to help her brother in everything, because his existence is very important for this world. And the main character must support him as she herself wanted. The girl thinks that he said such cliché words, but then she thinks that first she needs to get out of bed. The main character gets up from her bed and opens the door, where a knight meets her. He asks if this is Her Holiness, and then immediately kneels down and greets her. The maids also do this. Then the main character asks them to get up from their knees. But when they rise, they look away in embarrassment. The young lady doesn't understand why they are all reacting so strangely. Then her brother turns to Charlotte. He says that he thinks it's better for Her Holiness to return to her chambers. But when the girl turns around, she also sees the Emperor next to her brother. The brunette says that going out in just a shirt is a little too much. The main character only thinks that this is that handsome maniac and wonders why he gets angry every time they meet. The young lady looks at him, and he glares at her in return. Then Hildegard tells her brother to come up. Ludan does so and then stands in front of his sister and claims that he, Alsace Ludan, will protect Her Holiness and everyone can return to their places. The main character, looking at the brunette, thinks that she didn't seem to offer to play a staring contest. And the guy just thinks how she could go out in a shirt. Hildegard heard that this madman is the Emperor, but she is the pontiff, or the most important person in this world. The main character asks if he has any business there, and the guy just introduces himself. He claims to be Elisbane Vladimir Caleb, the ruler of the Elisbane Empire. Well, the girl can just call him Caleb. He asks if the young lady remembered anything about him. Then Ludan turns to His Majesty and says that he really didn't know that Her Holiness was not ready for an audience with him. Therefore, she asks to be given a little time so that she can prepare properly. But the Emperor says that it is better for her to let go. The main character does not understand what he is talking about, and the Emperor adds that he is talking about the fact that they are hugging. The young lady is a little shocked by this. She wonders if the guy wants to say that sister can't hug her little brother. The Emperor sees that they are not listening to him in a cold voice, orders to be released, and the young lady says that she does not think that she is obliged to follow his orders, and she will meet with Vladimir when she is ready, so let him wait. The guy just watches with a chilling gaze as the young lady goes to her room. When she and her brother enter the room, they immediately sigh. Ludan understands from the look from his sister that this was really rude. Then one of the maids comes into the room and asks for forgiveness for interrupting them at such a moment. And then she says that her name is Sarah, and from this day on she will serve Her Holiness as her personal maid. She is a Vatican-approved maid. The young lady asks when did this emperor arrive, because she is sure that the guy was not there the whole time. The maid says that after Her Holiness fainted, he immediately returned to his place. Then he thinks that is impressive, and thinks that he should have been back in a week, so he asks why he came back earlier. The maid says she met him 5 minutes ago, so she doesn't know. And Ludan says that even if they had met 5 minutes earlier, they would not be able to understand what this crazy person was thinking about. He tells Her Holiness to remember that he is called the cold-blooded emperor, and this is not an empty phrase. The main character thinks that the maids are trying to control themselves, but they still look depressed. Which means this is really true, because the guy hurt so many people because she didn't recognize him, and there must be a reason for everything. But the girl thinks, isn't this a crime? Then she asks Ludan if they can resist if the emperor does something unacceptable. The guy answers yes. The girl thinks that they will face negative consequences in any case. One of the maids claims that Her Holiness is ready. The young man says that even if this devil is an emperor, he will not dare to attack the Viceroy of God. And the likelihood of an attack is very low, since the entire continent would be plunged into turmoil, so Her Holiness need not worry. The main character thinks about what he's talking about, and the guy adds that the pontiff creates a magical barrier and maintains it, thereby blessing these lands. But when he dies, the barrier disappears, and healing people becomes impossible. This is called turmoil. The main character thinks that with such a loophole, she will be fine even if the sky falls, and she will protect her brother no matter the cost. The young lady hugs Ludan, and he smiles in response, but then he says that he thinks his sister needs to go out right now. After all, this psycho is having another seizure. The girl realizes that her brother is really rude. Even though he looks and sounds like an angel, his way of speaking is a little different. The main character tells her brother to stay there for now because they don't know what the emperor can do. Ludan's wife says that he is the protector of Her Holiness and, moreover, one of the strongest balls of Charlotte's Nazis, so at least he is very strong. The main character thinks that she is more worried about how the young man fearlessly talks to the emperor, because this can lead to not very pleasant consequences. The guy tells sister not to worry about him, but when they open the doors, the main character sees a terrible picture. All the wounded knights are already lying on the floor. The emperor says that lust was visible in their eyes. The young lady in shock thinks that this can't be true and he must be joking, and the guy adds that it was not respectful, so he finished them off, then kicks one of the servants. The main character screams so that he doesn't dare and doesn't even breathe in the direction of her people and moves away quickly, but he just kicks him again. Then the main character runs up to the knight and uses her healing power. Everyone is shocked to see the power of her holiness. The knights rise and say that they must protect her holiness. The main character understands that they will end up the same way as the previous one. So she holds out her hand and tells them not to come any closer. Hildegard thinks that the emperor is definitely handsome. After all, he has smooth black hair, and although at first it seems that he has a cold look, if you look closely, you can see a small sparkle. And he's not just any king, but the ruler of an entire empire. In other words, he's good on all counts. But the young woman does not understand why he kissed her then, and why he was interested in her. So she turns to His Majesty, but he tells the girl to call him Caleb. He says that he wants the young lady to address him by name, but Hildegard thinks that because of this man, her heart began to beat faster. Not making such a speech as if they were in some soap opera is a little surprising. But the young lady immediately tries to drive away such thoughts from herself and thinks that a second ago he did terrible things, so the girl has no need to be embarrassed. Hildegard invites His Majesty to return to business, but he only silently comes closer. And then he pokes her in the forehead and tells her to relax. Otherwise, it's easier to take stars out of the sky than to see her smile. Hildegard thinks she is dizzy, and it is not because she is afraid, but because her heart is beating so fast. This happens against her will, but the young lady does not understand why this is so. The emperor puts his hand on her chin. This makes the main character even more embarrassed, but the knights scream for him to take his hands off her holiness, because how dare he treat her so disrespectfully. Hildegard is worried because these people definitely won't be able to stop the emperor, and when the brunette begins to use his power, the young lady realizes that she must save them. Therefore, she approaches His Majesty and suggests continuing their conversation elsewhere. The guy is a little surprised by this, but then agrees he wants to say something. But Ludan interrupts him and tells Her Holiness that he will take her to the audience hall. And then, with a forced smile, he tells His Majesty to come with him too. On the way there, the young lady notices that the emperor is following her around. And this is very annoying, but the girl understands that this man has been looking at her from the moment she first saw him, as if this were normal. The young lady wonders if it is possible that he likes her. By the time Hildegard reached marriageable age, the disease had already reached her heart, and the girl could not think about dating. And because she was so busy with work at the company, she also didn't have time for such things. But the main character has little idea about it, and the emperor's action shows that this is definitely not love, and if it were her, then the guy wouldn't do this. But then the main character doesn't understand what it is, and whether it could be possessiveness, and if not that, then maybe the reason is need. When they enter the room, the girl thinks that religion plays an important role in politics, but even if so, she does not understand why the emperor needed to kiss her. Ludan tells the knight to wait outside, and then they sit down at the table. The main character understands that this is the audience hall, but it is much simpler than she imagined. The emperor turns to Ludan and asks if the guy thought he could stop them there. Charlotte's brother only says that he does not understand what the brunette is trying to say with this, and the emperor says that no matter what his divine rank is, the guy will not be able to stop him. The main character observes all this. She thinks that her little brother's temper seems to be out of control every time he meets the emperor, so she must keep these two at a distance. Therefore, the main character tells Ludan to leave, but the guy says that at least one holy ball should be with Her Holiness only if she is not in her chambers. When a girl asks if he can call someone higher in rank than him, the boy asks if his sister hates him, and the girl claims that this is certainly not the case. Then the brother asks to let him stay. The main character cannot resist such a look and agrees, and Ludan is very happy about this. The emperor just silently watches all this. After this, Ludan claims that since this is an informal meeting, he will discard all formalities. And then he asks for what reason the emperor wanted to meet with Her Holiness. But the brunette only seriously replies that he came to pick up his bride. The main character is shocked by this. And her brother says that the pontiff has no time for stupid jokes, and Vladimir claims that this is not a joke. The guy asks why he is looking for his bride there, and the emperor replies that it is because she is there. Then he tells Hilda to go with him. The main character, shocked by this, asks what he's talking about, but he just continues to look at her. The girl says that this cannot be, and asks if the emperor says that she is his bride. The young man immediately gets up from the table, and the brother of the main character approaches him. The girl understands that this will only lead to an even bigger quarrel. Therefore, he tells them to wait, and claims that he does not understand at all what His Majesty is talking about. Ludan says he can clear things up and then claims that their parents are not from this holy nation. They were citizens of the Elisbane Empire. Their mother was very close to the previous emperor's concubine, and when the current emperor was the 12th prince, he was 4 years old. Then their mother became pregnant, and they decided that if a girl was born, she would be named Hildegard. Her parents promised that she would marry the prince. This promise was notarized in front of many witnesses and is not an empty phrase. Ludan says with a smile on his face that he tried to create an atmosphere of nostalgia, but His Majesty completely destroyed it, and it's not enough to glare at people to get away with everything. The main character, in shock, only thinks that she wants to go home, and her brother says that the fact is that the emperor has no evidence. But he claims that if it's just a matter of evidence, then he has it. After which the guy uses force and a scroll appears in his hands. Hildegard does not understand what it is. Ludan whispers in her ear that this is magic, and its form is different from her sister's divine power. The main character thinks that there are many things that she does not yet know about this world, and she better quickly get used to this. Then the emperor puts the document on the table and says that they can check everything themselves. The document states that children Hildegard and Caleb will marry when the former turns 20 years old. And God is their witness, because they officially confirm the engagement. The main character, looking at the document, understands that, as far as she can judge, this is completely legal. Hildegard asks her brother if it is normal practice to agree on something like this before the baby is born. The young man claims no, and signing a prenuptial agreement for an unborn child is unusual even for this place. The main character thinks that it is written on his face that he does not believe, but the emperor claims that this document is real. And the guy should have noticed the gilded signature of the notary, which was applied with the help of divine power. The main character asks Ludan why their parents would do such a thing if this kind of thing is not accepted in secular circles. But the guy claims that even before the young lady was born, a man named Elisbain Siegfried Yeb was the third prince, and there were often rumors that he had his eye on the mother of the current emperor, known for her beauty. He made an alliance with other nobles to protect you. The main character thinks that even knowing this, she still feels uneasy. She couldn't even imagine that in this life she would be involved in a story with an arranged wedding. But the emperor just gets up from his seat and approaches the young lady. He points his finger at the document and tells her to look. After all, it says that they will marry when Hildegard turns 20 years old. According to her mother's oath, the girl must marry him now. Ludan claims that he has already said that circumstances have changed since then. After all, the moment his sister was recognized as pontiff, the contract was automatically annulled. The main character understands that she only felt some anxiety for one moment. The girl felt as if she was not seen as a person, and for them she was just a person playing some role. How before she was not an ordinary girl named Li Shinju, but was the CEO of Li Shinju. And even the family she seemed to trust saw her in the same light. Of course, the young lady wanted to live again for the sake of her little sister. But Hildegard wonders if she only needs that part of her that is called her holiness. The emperor breaks the girl out of her thoughts and claims that it is true that she was chosen as a saint immediately after birth. But at the same time, Hildegard is also his man, his woman, and his companion. The young lady is a little embarrassed by this. She wonders if it could be that this man sees her as more than just Pontiff Hildegard Charlotte, but also as a person who will become his companion. The girl realizes that for the first time in this place, she met someone who sees her as an ordinary girl. But suddenly Ludan grabs his sister by the hand. He says that as the viceroy of God, her holiness is not just some kind of person. And the emperor cannot take everything that lies unevenly. The brother claims that he too is not some kind of person. After all, he is the one and only emperor of this continent, and this oath, taken under the testimony of God, is valid. The young lady's brother says what a scoundrel he is, and then says that it doesn't matter how long he insists on the authenticity of the oath. But Her Holiness is still God's vicegerent, and no matter what his title is, he has no right to equate Her Holiness with ordinary people. Well, the guy claims that Hilda's fiancé has the right to do this. Ludan grits his teeth and says that the guy really was talking nonsense from the very beginning. Vladimir claims that he also has the right to call his empress by name. This infuriates Ludan. He hits the table with his hand and asks what his empress means. The guy cries out if he doesn't have enough of his title of emperor and Her Holiness cannot get married, because if she gets married, it means angering heaven. The main character is a little shocked by this. She thinks that, simply put, God's punishment means that she will receive a call from above, but in religion this means death. The guy asks if the emperor wants to finish off Her Holiness, but the brunette claims that not at all, and Hildegard will not die if she gets married. Then the brother asks what evidence he has. The young man points to the same document and claims that if Ludan needs evidence, then it is right in front of him, because if Hilda was the same as other priests who die if they get married, then this oath would have been destroyed long ago. But if a person is elected pontiff, then God blesses him and eliminates any threats to life. This oath, written under the testimony of God, still exists, and this means that he still approves of Hilda's engagement. The main character is embarrassed by this, but Ludan only grabs this document and claims that God could not have foreseen such an eccentric situation. Her Holiness was born with the symbols of a god's viceroy, but until last week there was no soul in her body, and the situation is unusual. Therefore they cannot rely on anything or compare it with anything. The emperor claims that it is because the case is unprecedented. There shouldn't be any problem with Hilda marrying him. Ludan claims that the brunette's tendency to talk nonsense already seems like a disease, and whether he wants to turn to God's help. The emperor says that no, and he is going to take Hilda as his wife because of this situation. Only he and she should be the only ones dealing with this issue. It is better for outsiders not to interfere. Ludan only asks if he, the young lady's brother, is a stranger. The emperor claims that everything is correct, and in this matter, Alsace Ludan is an outsider and therefore must keep his mouth shut. The guy just mockingly asks what this means. After all, does this mean that because of a piece of paper that could threaten the life of his sister, he should give in? The emperor claims that this is not just a piece of paper, but evidence that his marriage with Hilda is God's will. The young man claims that this is just an assumption of an ordinary man without significant arguments. The main character thinks that these words sound a little cruel, so she says it because enough is enough. Vladimir clenches his fists and says that he wants to resolve the issue peacefully, and it would be better if he watched his words because the emperor's patience has a limit. But the brother only says that he wonders why Vladimir is trying so hard to convince them that black is white, and maybe his plan is to get rid of Her Holiness. He screams that the empire is going to repair its holy nation, and the emperor is already losing his temper over this. A little time later, the main character sees that the table is destroyed. She thinks why this is so. But when she turns around, she sees her brother pressed against the wall. She screams his name, very worried. At this moment, the girl remembers how that same God addressed her. He asked why the young lady wanted to live. Now the young lady thinks that she will not allow anyone to lay a finger on her brother. The girl uses her power, and from this the emperor flies to the other side of the room. The young lady, breathing heavily, approaches Ludan. She understands that she must protect the boy no matter what happens. The emperor rises from the floor. The lady with golden hair asks what he thinks he just did. The girl claims that there is no way she will be the bride of a villain like him, because he hurt her family right in front of her. So the girl refuses to be engaged to someone like him. The guy uses his magic and turns to Hilda. The girl thinks that he is impudent and the man wants to marry her without taking into account her own feelings. She is sure that she hates the guy, but every time he calls her name, her heart begins to waver. The emperor says that this is enough, because using holy power in such quantities is harmful to her body. The young lady thinks that Ludan is only to blame for the fact that he has such a sister, and he suffered while trying to protect her from her with just his weak body. But suddenly the young lady has red liquid coming out of her mouth. The girl thinks what happened, and the young man immediately runs up to her, even though the divine powers wound him. The main character thinks that the last time he touched her face, his hands were warm, and now they are so cold. The young lady realizes that she made this man this way, but Hildegard feels her strength leaving her and sees double. Vladimir claims that the pontiff cannot be treated with the help of divine power, and every time she harms herself, even in such a situation, she presses this cockroach to herself. The main character says not to call his younger brother a cockroach, but the emperor says that her brother is the most disgusting of the cockroach nation. But even though she insulted him, The guy was not going to finish him off precisely because he is her brother. And he did so knowing that such a thing could not finish off the holy night. Hildegard thinks why this man is making excuses to her, and the guy claims that her condition turned out to be much worse than he thought. The young lady wonders what he is talking about, and although the guy is healed, his neck is seriously injured, but he looks as if his eyes can only be directed at her. The young lady understands that he is really worried about her at such a moment, but the girl does not understand what happened after, but before losing consciousness, she felt something heavy touch her lips. When Hilda first met Huan He, she seemed like a small and sweet child. She liked the baby so much that at just one glance, she fell in love with her. The baby's mother said to say hello to her sister. Then, for the first time, Huan He called her sister. The main character thought what an angel the girl was. Li Shinju said that since she is older than her sister, the baby will be her younger sister. The main character said these words without even thinking. Huan He was so cute. The baby was the complete opposite. The main character was raised in strictness as the heir to the company, and Huan He was a smart and bright child, as if woven from love. Usually the main character did not like children, but her puppy cuteness captured her heart instantly. The girl was the successor to the head of a big business conglomerate, and Huan He was the daughter of an ordinary housekeeper. But despite this, they really were like sisters. The main character thought that she would always love this child, but 13 years after the death of her father, the young lady found out that she and Huan He were half-sisters. Now the young lady wakes up in her bed. She wonders why she suddenly dreamed about the past, but then she remembers Lu Dan and immediately jumps out of bed. The young lady wonders if she saved him that time and what happened, but suddenly the maid turns to Hildegard. She asks if Her Holiness is awake. The main character asks what happened to the leader and whether he was seriously injured. Sarah tells her not to worry, because the cardinal is not in danger. Hildegard claims that she wants to see him today, but the maid says that right now the cardinal is at a meeting with Ellisbane's ambassador in the second audience hall, and when Her Holiness eats, the maid will help her get ready. The young lady claims that she must see him as soon as possible so she will eat later. Then the maid claims that Her Holiness has not eaten anything for 3 days. After all, the maid also forgot to say that Her Holiness had been unconscious for 3 days. The main character doesn't think if this happened again. After all this, they came to a compromise. The young lady agreed to eat with Lu Dan and left the room. It was then that she saw 2 little angels. When they saw Sarah, they immediately ran up to her calling her mommy. The maid apologizes to Her Holiness, but the young lady only asks if they are Sarah's children. The woman says they are twins. The boy is Parian and the girl is Aryan. The little girl says about her mother that this little sister is very beautiful, and the young man says that Aryan is an idiot. After all, this is Her Holiness the pontiff. They are sister. Hildegard watches all this with a smile, and the maid asks what these 2 are doing in the presence of Her Holiness. The main character says that everything is fine, and she is not a follower of rules. The girl thinks how cute the kids are, and they are about 7 years old. Huan He was the same age when the young lady first met her. The lady with blonde hair thinks she misses those days, because back then the baby was a real cutie. But suddenly the main character hears someone scream. It turns out to be that boy. He fell and hit himself. Sarah apologizes to Her Holiness and asks to give her a minute, and the boy cries and tells his mother that he is in great pain. Then a knight approaches the main character. He greets Her Holiness and says that he is the first holy knight, Amanzio. The guy claims that he is escorting Her Holiness instead of the maid. The main character says that she is very grateful to him, but asks if he could wait for her for a minute. She then tells Sarah to come over with her children, and then the young lady heals the boy's forehead. The young man, in shock, says that now he is not in pain at all. The maid tells Her Holiness that using divine power for something like this is a bit wasteful. The boy says that it is an honor for him to meet Her Holiness and thanks the girl. The main character smiles in response to this, and the boy reaches out to her and says that he wants to be held by Her Holiness. Sarah tries to calm him down, but the main character takes the baby into her arms. The maid apologizes for being so rude. The young lady claims that everything is fine, and Sarah claims that she has just come to her senses, and her body must not have fully recovered yet. The main character thinks that she is right, and the girl does not understand how, especially considering that she fainted, but her body is surprisingly in perfect order, and moreover she feels how energy overwhelms her. Arian asks Her Holiness to take her in his arms too. Hildegard thinks that she has definitely heard that divine power does not work on the pontiff, so this situation seems surprising to her. A short time later, the main character turns to Sarah and says that very little time has passed, and the maid is already tired. The woman says she is ashamed of this. Then the young lady turns to Lord Amanzio and asks to accompany her to Ludan. The guy obeys. A little time later, they already approach the door, and the knight standing there informs that her fatherland has arrived, so they should watch their manners. The two servants immediately bow to the young lady and greet her. Hildegard tells them to rise, and they immediately do so. One of them greets Her Holiness and claims to be the second Holy Knight, Felix Rowdy. The young lady thinks that this guy reminds her of a bandit, and she should get used to this type of appearance, although she only had 3 days before she fainted again. The main character thinks about how to say it, because he looks a little uncouth, but at the same time majestic. He also reminded her of those twins. When Hildegard looks at Sarah, she sees that she turns away, and the knight only silently looks at the maid. Then, the main character enters the audience room. It is reported that Mr. Ludan and Ellisbane's ambassador are inside. When the brother sees Hildegard enter the room, he immediately rises from his seat. The ambassador also rises and greets Her Holiness. He states that his name is Andrew, and he is the Chancellor of the Great Empire of Ellisbane. The young lady wonders if this man is even human, because it seems that he is trying to be polite. But judging by his cold gaze, he rather studies his victim with all his arrogance and looks down on them. The main character feels a little strange. She says that she is confused because why did the Chancellor of the Great Empire need to come all this way? The young man claims that 3 days ago an incident occurred on the territory of the Holy Nation in which their emperor was seriously injured, and he came to protest on behalf of the empire. The main character thinks about what he is talking about and whether the emperor is in serious condition. She asks the chancellor if he says that the emperor was seriously injured. The man replies that everything is exactly like that. But then Ludan says that this is impossible. He claims that he cannot say for sure, since he fainted, but he knows for sure that the emperor left using his own powers, and if he was seriously injured, he would not be able to use teleportation magic. Andrew states that the Emperor's regeneration may not be as strong as that of the Holy Knights, but it is quite enough for such a thing. And as they know, his magic is much more powerful. The young man's strength is sufficient that he can use a teleportation spell, temporarily suppressing the pain of his injuries. However, His Majesty has lost a lot of blood, and despite treatment has been unconscious for the 4th day. Even with his good health and strong magic, he remains unconscious, and for the first time it happens that His Majesty receives such serious injuries that he is unable to engage in the affairs of the empire. It also poses a huge threat to the reputation of the Vatican, which symbolizes peace and stability on the continent. And how can he do nothing as Chancellor of the Empire? The young man claims that he also cannot stand the hysterics of this leech, who know where the exit from His Majesty's room is. The main character and her brother think that for some reason they think this is the main reason for his visit. The guy says that of course he understands that the emperor caused some inconvenience to the Vatican and caused some noise, but they are the only empire on the continent that borders the Vatican. The chancellor asks if they really want to receive an official complaint from them, but he says the Vatican is not a rogue state with no concept of respect for its neighbors. The main character thinks that his threats are very veiled, and the guy speaks as if he would capture us if necessary. Although if he is the Chancellor of the Empire at such a young age, then this is probably not a joke. But the girl thinks that she is also not one of the simple ones, because in front of the Chancellor now sits the only pontiff in the world, and the former CEO of the company rolled into one. Hildegard is a difficult, ignorant child who woke up at 20 years old. Therefore, the young lady claims that His Majesty was the first to bestow threats and insults on his neighbors, instead of politeness and respect. If His Majesty's actions were an act of politeness, this may mean that everything is completely bad with this in the empire. The young lady asks if it is typical for her to attack a cardinal who opposes an unreasonable demand and use force, causing destruction right in front of the pontiff. The guy claims that he doesn't think His Majesty's request was the root of Her Holiness's problems. However, given his preoccupation with His Majesty's injuries, he was unaware of the unreasonable demands. The young lady then claims that the emperor demanded that she marry him. The Chancellor is almost calling the Emperor a psycho. But then he apologizes and says he didn't know anything about it. The main character says that everything is fine and she understands what this feeling is. Hildegard thinks that judging by the reaction of the Chancellor, it becomes obvious that the Emperor acted against common sense. So the girl thinks what a relief it is. She is sure that the Chancellor staged this comedy so that the Empire would receive something from the Holy Nation as an apology. The main character says that she will sincerely pray for his speedy recovery. The young man says that he will convey her words to His Majesty. And the girl says that even so, she no longer wants to raise the issue of her marriage, so she asks the Chancellor to tell him that the Emperor should destroy the written oath. But the young man wonders if he can ask Her Holiness a question. The young lady agrees, and the young man then asks if the girl is saying that the written oath was not destroyed during her mother's pregnancy. Hildegard claims that everything is exactly like that, and she saw it with her own eyes. Well, then the Chancellor says that if she was not destroyed, then Her Holiness should most likely marry the Emperor. The main character and her brother are shocked by this. They ask if he is saying this after almost calling the Emperor a psycho. Frankincense screams that he should not talk nonsense, because if Her Holiness gets married, who will incur the wrath of heaven? But Andrew says that won't happen. Then the brother of the main character asks what evidence he has, and the Chancellor says that the proof is that the written oath was not destroyed. He also says not to forget that the mere existence of the oath, witnessed by God, is of great importance, and only he knows why it has not yet been destroyed. The young lady thinks that her brain has decided to mock her, or that she really hears the same words as 3 days ago. Well, she understands that for now, she needs to deal with the current situation. Therefore, the main character turns to Mr. Chancellor and says that now her state of health cannot be called good, and after she recovers they will contact him. And now she asks if the Chancellor could return to his place. Andrew gets up from his seat and says that he understands, and that he will wait a week. The main character thinks that everything clearly did not go according to plan, because a week is enough for the Empire to take retaliatory action. But there's nothing that can be done about it since the problem cannot be solved now. The audience was a waste of time. The guy bows and says that he will return in a week, and he also says that he prays for baked peace on this earth. The main character, sitting on the sofa, thinks that her head is almost splitting. Ludon turns to his sister and apologizes for what happened 3 days ago and now. He says he lost his temper and didn't show his best side. Then the young lady asks how old Ludon is. The boy does not understand what she's talking about, and the main character just hugs him and says that her brother is still very young, so everything is fine. A short time later, Hildegard eats a cake. She is sure that she is eating sweetness, but for some reason it seems to her that she is a character in some kind of horror movie, because the cake leaves a bloody aftertaste. This is all because her brother tells how previous pontiffs died when they tried to get married. One of them was struck by lightning, and the other had a heart attack. The girl thinks that the main thing is that Ludon's appetite is fine, and the guy is only asking for more. The main character thinks that this is calming, but she doesn't understand what to do, because her little brother is too cute. But this child has the responsibilities of a cardinal and a sword saint on his shoulders, even with such a small body, and the girl doesn't even know what to do when her brother gets married, because she's simply not mentally prepared for it. But then the young lady asks Ludon that if she cannot get married, then the cardinals cannot either, but the boy replies that they can. After all, the pontiff is the only one for whom this is prohibited. Even if he has a person dear to his heart, he cannot marry. The main character thinks what kind of discrimination this is, and Ludon only adds that the pontiff cannot have children, and this prohibition is absolute. The young lady only in her thoughts asks God if he doesn't like her that much, although she didn't intend to have children either. Ludon asks his sister if she is okay, and the girl replies that she is okay as long as she has him. The main character thinks God couldn't have said this in advance, because if they were in Korea now, she would have sued for deception long ago. Moreover, the emperor would also have to face the law for trying to kill her brother. Then the young lady asks if her brother can get married and have children. The young man just looks at her in surprise, and then looks away and nods. Hildegard thinks how sweet this is, because perhaps this topic still confuses him. The girl says that since she cannot have children, then Ludon can marry and give her nephews. But then she tells the young man not to attach too much importance to this because she doesn't want to put pressure on him and only wants to say that he will have such an opportunity if he finds someone he likes. And then the young lady asks if her brother happens to have a girlfriend, but he just laughs and asks what sister is talking about. The main character asks if he even has anyone in mind, and the young man replies that he doesn't. Then his sister says that it's a little sad. The young man claims that he never had time for this kind of thing since he was very busy fulfilling the duties of the first cardinal and the third holy sword. In addition, he spent a lot of time on his studies. The main character is a little shocked by this. She understands that if you think about it, the first cardinal stands immediately after the pontiff in the church hierarchy. So she awkwardly asks Ludan if he has been carrying out her duties all this time by chance. Then the young man replies that yes, because if suddenly the pontiff is unable to fulfill his duties, then the first cardinal replaces him and acts on behalf of the viceroy. And before the young lady woke up, he conscientiously did all the work for her. The main character thinks that it was so ignorant and insensitive to ask him about the girl. In his previous life, he gave his life for her, and even now the young lady pretends to cause trouble with her mind. Therefore, she apologizes, but Ludan says that since he is still too young, he has little experience and needs to learn a lot. And also he did not do everything alone because other cardinals also helped a lot. The young lady thinks that the boy said this with such gratitude, but it seemed to her that he said, "other cardinals" with a hint of sarcasm. The main character is sure that this attitude is not unfounded, but if she wants to find out what the problem is, then the young lady needs to act carefully. The main character says that she is here now, so she suggests working hard together. Ludan agrees and says that he is doing everything in his power to help. Then Hildegard asks if there are any other prohibitions besides marriage and children. Ludan says that the pontiff cannot resurrect the dead because he has the power to do so. However, having used them, he fell into eternal sleep. In fact, 300 years ago, there was a case when the pontiff was called to heaven because of an attempt at resurrection. And as a result, the continent plunged into darkness for 10 years, and a fifth of the population died. The main character is shocked by this. She thinks how many lives were taken by the rash actions of one single person. But she was told that balance in this world directly depends on divine blessing. But she could not even imagine that everything was so serious. Ludan turns to his sister and asks if everything is okay, because she has turned pale. The girl thinks that she should be fine because she needs to show that she is capable of something. The young lady said that she was capable of anything as long as her younger brother was nearby and would not return back because she could not disappoint her brother. But now he is alive and sitting right in front of her, and this is the only thing that matters, because this time he can be happy. The main character says that she knows very little about divine violence, so she needs help, but when it comes to management, she can use knowledge from her past life. And if she uses them here, who thinks that she can change this world for the better? Ludan happily says that he will also help in every way. The main character thinks that, of course, it won't be easy. But this is the world where she lives with Ludan, and she will do her best. The Chancellor returns back at this time, but looking at the picture that awaited him, he sighs heavily because the princess destroys everything in her path. The girl, with undisguised rage in her voice, claims that she will find a way to finish off the pontiff, leaving him no chance of salvation. Andrew is a noble presence, outstanding talent, and refined elegance. He has no flaws, and he himself comes from the famous house of Takashun. However, he disowned his family and abandoned this surname. When Elisbane Vladimir Caleb ascended the throne as the new emperor, such a reaction was quite expected. After all, the only person who could resist the emperor knew about his inclinations, that is, about his attacks of madness. There were no those who could compare with Andrew, who held the position of chancellor. Despite his high position, he was always modest and treated others with respect. Because of this, many young ladies gave their hearts to Andrew, who later literally drowned in letters of confession, but everyone was refused. And the reason for all this is a man who would willingly plunge the continent into turmoil, and Andrew was forced to deal with him. The Chancellor is wondering how much the repairs will cost this time. Elisbane Salome Judith, at 20 years old, is the 7th princess of the empire, being the younger sister of the current emperor and the only heir to the throne. Porcelain, coffee-colored skin, deep red eyes, shiny black hair reminiscent of the Milky Way, a high nose, perfect eyebrows, full striking red lips, and an equally perfect figure, and, in addition, a tall height of 180 centimeters. One glance was enough for her to captivate everyone. However, the girl is absolutely crazy. The Chancellor now asks the princess not to take out her anger on the poor wall and unfortunate furniture, because they only recently replaced them.